as an African-American male, just being a minority in this country in general, you're typically told, and, you know, through just basically societal standards, to bottle that up and walk through life with that rage internalized, instead of actually at any point kind of having any opportunity to even just like yell at a certain level and say, hey, I'm very angry about this. Because typically when we're saying, you know, we're very angry about this, you have many counter politics or counter protesters or counter ideologues that say, you know, look, America's gone past this point, you need to get over it, which creates its own, you know, new trauma of basically forcing minorities to internalize certain emotions. So that really stood out with me, because though I feel it and though I think it on a daily basis, I hadn't really addressed how much rage as a people we actually have. So that was phenomenal. Yeah. So to just like basically to just provide more context to that, when you had brought up love, I kind of had the reaction of, well, that's kind of a weak method of kind of, and I didn't mean any disrespect. I was kind of, you know, saying that's kind of a weak method in change, because every time we see societal change or any, specifically surrounding the civil rights movement, there was a lot of rage that came out of a lot of, let's say Malcolm X or the Black Panthers, a lot of groups that basically led a lot of the white liberals to align themselves with more peaceful protests like Martin Luther King. And so I was saying basically that throughout our history, it's typically those that have the rage, those that actually catalyze a certain movement, or those that are angry. And so I had this personal feeling that that though love is important, I don't disregard love. I think that if we want to operate or mechanize any type of change within this society, the United States, I believe it comes with anger and rage first. When you start to examine specifically the history in the civil rights era, and though we're still going through the civil rights era, but specifically in the 1960s, 1950s, you see that Malcolm X, you know, a man that literally said, you know, liberty, you know, give me liberty or else, basically, is you know, pertaining to, if you don't recognize the human being here presenting to you right now, then we're going to have to use other means, by any means necessary, was what I was trying to get at. And I think that that's an extremely valuable tool. I think that throughout the civil rights era, when Black people and Chicanos also came to the forefront and said, look, this is what we need, because, you know, you're angering us to such an extent that I don't know how much more we can take of this. And I think that was kind of I thought that was basically, I personally still believe that was the reason why a lot of white people, not just white liberals, but the mainstream white America basically conceded the point that, look, these people are angry about how they're experiencing what they're experiencing. And, you know, regardless of if we don't experience that or not, we have to basically address that anger, that rage, because if we don't, then something else bad probably will happen. And so I think that's why I believe in the power of rage and the power of anger.
What about the conversation, just wanting to recreate it a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What about the conversation that we had around politics and activism, like most resonated with you, or like is most alive? I think like 3 days have gone by since we talked.
Right.
So what pieces of that conversation have stayed in your mind and are most alive? What you're describing to me is what what people in the movement that I've heard of call sacred rage.
Right.
And so it's not just rage, it's actually sacred, because you're actually not only holding your rage, you're holding rage from generations and generations and generations of injustice.
Right.
And that's part of what makes it so explosive. So to me, saying that the movement is fueled by love and saying that sacred rage has every right to exist belong in the same sentence. What often passes for love is shallow suppression of rage, but not love.
Right.
The key is to create a space for it, not when it comes up and it's triggered, but create a space for it that's planned.
Okay. Right.
So you know the rage is there.
Yeah.
You plan a process to make it come out.
Right.
So you're ready for it.
Okay.
Instead of waiting for someone to get pissed off at you.
Right.
Basically, which is the way our rage generally comes out, right?
Yeah.
So in healing work, people hold space for rage by creating processes, like literally meetings where, okay, we're holding the space and whoever's ready lets it out.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a chance to let out your rage without you being mad at a specific person, although you use the other people in the group as proxies.
Okay.
And when you enter that space, there's an agreement that those people are okay being used as proxies.
Okay.
So they choose to be whoever the person you're most enraged at is.
Right.
So that you can let it out. So what it takes to do that, though, is an unconditional love of self.
Right.
What is uncommon is that people who do that deep healing work, but I think is also growing, it's not as uncommon as it may have been 20, 30 years ago, is people who do that deep healing work to have also a deep understanding of societal oppression, mm-hmm. and to marry those two practices.
Right.
So when I think about love and power, I look at like that unconditional love of self is incredible fuel. Mm. And, you know, I used to I would put in my hours like years ago. Like I could work when I was working on my Ph.D, like 14 hours a day, whatever, with the TV running, of course, because I needed the company.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, I know you mean.
I am so motivated by my work these days. Like I have to slow myself. Like I have to be mindful of when I need sleep. I actually need less sleep because I'm so motivated sometimes. Anyway, I've been talking for a moment, but basically what I'm curious about is like if we use that when Martin said love transforms hate, that's what I believe he was saying, and we have not done what Martin said. He was his ambition. We haven't done it.
Yeah, you're right.
What we have done is what you call the shallow stuff.
Right.
Right? Like, oh, you gotta love each other. Shut up and don't be angry. Shut up and don't be pissed. Just shut up and don't be like. That's not love. Right. That's shoving it under the carpet. So I'm curious, what would happen to our social movements if we had that kind of unconditional, like if we cultivated unconditional self-love within our activist groups? Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Because my outside world transformed when I transformed the inside. So what would happen if we had 10,000 people transforming their inside world? What would our outside world look like? That's what I'm curious about. And to me, that's what healing activism is.
That's great, actually, because I'm sitting here and I'm writing basically, why do you always look at love going out but not coming in? I feel like that's kind of an entrained way we look at love. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's a great point. I mean, because we really do. Because even when we talk about, the greatest love story on earth, it's about how he loved her so much and she loved him so much. But there's never that dialogue at all, I don't think, of how we can actually love ourselves in any substantial way. That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. I think that I think a lot of people in this country actually have that issue of, because this country is pretty cutthroat, all right? Our culture is pretty cutthroat, where we basically don't have any holidays here, and people are supposed to work almost 365 days a year, and that really cuts a lot of relationship with you out of the system, out of the society. Europeans have, guaranteed holidays. Beautiful. And it makes a lot of sense. They seem a lot happier. So I guess they're doing something right. Right. And so I think that, that's an excellent point, is that you get time to recognize how great you are when you're not put into, a consistent situation that you don't want to be in. Not everyone, can do what they want to do with their lives. Because I look at least for you, I look at that as a blessing, that you have the ability to do something that you love. Not everyone is blessed with that opportunity. That's just, reality to some extent. Not everyone has that opportunity. And I think that if people could still understand that there are other ways to be successful besides your external, to actually address your internal, I think we would have a different type of society, and activism would be completely different, because even with everything that we can do for racial equality, Black people, Latino people, Asian people, everyone is still going to have to extract and exercise that societal "I'm not good enough." And I think that, so that type of, that type of love, that type of analysis, I think is because that, and see, that comes from our own society and our own system. But I think that that's really valuable that we do, because that's really what every type of activism really needs to address, is if you can conquer the internal, the external will kind of find its way to fruition. I think that that's kind of, yeah.
I love what you're saying. And to me, that's what the activism world has to give the healing world.
Right.
Is that not good enough that I grew up with.
Right.
Although I healed it as my own.
Right.
Wasn't given to me just as individual Rita.
Right.
I mean, you could say, yeah, because my mama was this and my papa was that, but my mother was fruit of how women are raised in a certain cultural context.
Exactly. Right.
And my dad was the fruit of what is expected of men in a patriarchal world, right? In country. And so the not good enoughs, to me, the fiction of the healing world is that the not good enough is, I don't know if it's fiction, but there's like, I just don't, in most healing communities, I have one healing community that's getting really real about social justice and healing at the same time. And not, it's not a chance. There are people from like Black Lives Matter in the group and who are using healing techniques in Black Lives Matter in different like areas of the Northeast. But overall, a lot of healers assume that the wounds are actually individual wounds.
Right.
So there's a lot of literature on how our families generate our wounds.
Right.
And there's not like stepping it up. Like our families didn't get it out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. They got it from the societal not good enoughs. Right. Right. That come from, like for you, you were saying it's like being the odd, like what's the oddball based on what's the perception of Blackness is, and whether you're performing Blackness or not to people's expectations. And anyway, and what it means for be a woman is another aspect. If you're Asian, there's another, or Native or First Nations, they're all different layers depending on what your background is. But overall, there are societal frames that we've created that are traumatic. Right. And that trauma gets perpetuated. It's like, it's fractal. So it's like there are these large systems and then it gets perpetuated. It's like the building blocks. So the individual is the one brick, and then the society is the well, I was going to say skyscraper, but skyscrapers aren't made out of brick, but like huge building. That's the society, right? Anyway, so to me, there's a conversation to happen between these two worlds.
Absolutely.
And what they have in common is this common commitment to transformation.
Right.
But the way you do transformation, if you're looking individually, and the way you do transformation, if you're looking societally, are very different.
Yes.
And I want to see these like incredible change makers that I know from both of those worlds really come into conversation and unite.
Right. Right.
That's what I'm passionate about right now.
That's great. That's the more we keep talking about it, the more I see not just how powerful the understanding of healing actually is, but also the necessity for it, right? That we really, first of all, typically in this society, we don't really talk about any type of health at all. And so, to even go into mental health, spiritual health, physical health, is great. But I think connecting that to activism is actually I mean, you've got me thinking about. Well, now I'm going to have to read Ta-Nehisi Coates' Case for Reparations again because I want to look at it from a different angle now. But like it's real. Like that's. I think it's phenomenal that at least there's some people out there, there's some readers out there that actually are trying to connect the two. So that's really good.